Hello, everyone, and good morning from Madrid. My name is Jeff Klein, and I'm one of the co-directors of Multitudes Foundation. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this very special occasion, which is the official launch of Multitudes Foundation. More than 100 people are here to join us from every corner of Europe, and we're very pleased to spend this next hour with you.
Hi everyone, welcome. We are so excited to be here today. I'm Sarah Dulieu. I'm the other co-director of Multitudes Foundation. And yes, we're finally here, and we wouldn't be here without so many partners, our design networks members, our funders who are already backing us. So we are so happy to be there. I think I want to take just time before we start to say thank you also to some people you won't see on screen today, but who are part of the team. So I'm thinking about Kitty van Bertele, but also Melkan Osgo and Luis Aguado, but also our board member, Shei Akiwowo. We're so glad that you're part of the team, and we hope that we'll give you more space next time so you can be part of also some presentations.
So, but before we start, just a couple of notes regarding accessibility. Remember that you can activate the automatic caption function at the bottom of your Zoom window. We also have two British sign language interpreters, Russell and Vivi, with us today. You can look for this option also at the bottom of your screen. Additionally, we have a chat, so please feel free to comment, to react, send in your questions also. Unfortunately, we will not be able to answer all your questions today, but we will definitely make sure to monitor the chat, capture them, and answer them later on. And lastly, it's always very important to be mindful of who's in the room and who isn't in the room, whose perspectives are represented here and whose perspectives are not represented. And this is an ongoing and often imperfect process, but we're very excited to share our commitments to this process of inclusivity as we grow and develop our organization.
Thank you, Jeff. So if you're here today, that means that you share something with us, and I think you feel that we need to reimagine politics. And that's why Multitudes Foundation was created. What we want to do is to support political change makers who are building a more inclusive, a more hopeful, and a more human politics. Because we know that if we want democracy to work for everyone, we need to have a representative political leadership and decision-making so that all perspectives can be taken into account and we can have better policies that work for everyone. We know that people disengage from politics when political representation falls short. So really committed to work on that mission with you all.
Now, I know what many of you might be thinking, because I was thinking the same. Reimagining politics is such a daunting task, right? With all of the different injustices and compounding issues that we're seeing. But we are actually here to tell you that there is definitely a lot of hope out there. In the last couple of months, we've talked to many change makers and very motivated and passionate individuals and groups. We've talked to initiatives that are preparing new political leaders, initiatives that are testing new ways and approaches to building more inclusive and humane political structures. We've also talked to initiatives that are helping communities to mobilize and build political power. And we can tell you that there's definitely a lot of hope and a lot of reason to be very optimistic about the future with all the sheer talent, the passion, and the ambition that we've seen.
So today you will meet some of those political change makers from across Europe. So we are in Madrid, we all the team to organize that event, but we will also hear people in Brussels, in Stockholm, but also in Nice, I think, if I'm not mistaken, because we have some people who are moving. And we want to know where you are. So tell us, like in the chat, maybe your name and which city you're joining us from. We're very curious to know. So what's the agenda for today? First, we're going to listen to politicians, to academics, and to other political change makers who are going to bring us, and also some funders who are going to bring us their perspective of why this work is important. Then we're going to present you our theory of change, but also our plans for 2023 and beyond. And finally, we will announce our first grantees, but also our first open call for ideation grants. But first, let's listen to Gary van Gulik and Paul Alarcon, who are board members and co-founders of Multitudes Foundation, who are going to tell us a bit about how the idea of Multitudes Foundation came to life.
Thank you so much. And wow, it's quite a moment, I have to say, just on a personal note. It's incredible to see so many of you I am really moved that we're at this point, ready to get started. I am excited and thrilled. So thank you so much, Jeff and Sarah. Thank you all for being here, for participating. I'm going to keep it very short, but we wanted to give you a quick sense of where this was all coming from. In essence, Multitudes was born from a very simple idea, a pretty ambitious one, but simple, which is that if you want just and fair societies, a democracy that really works for everyone, we're going to have to change politics. And we all know the problems. We know why this is necessary. I mean, in Europe right now, there is a war raging. We have fascism on the rise. We really have a threat to our democracies at this time. But what excites us, honestly, the most, and what gives us so much hope, is the amount of people all over Europe who are finding ways to activate people, to mobilize, to organize for refugees, for human rights, for social justice, for a healthy environment. It's really in that energy, those people, that Multitude sees hope. The problem is that all too often, that work isn't quite translated into political power. And it's exactly that nexus where Multitudes wants to come in. Just on a personal note, I've been personally quite frustrated in my past human rights work, whether it was on refugee rights or women's rights, that we often talk at politics, right? Or somehow see it separate from us. But of course, it's all deeply connected, and we cannot make the progress we need to make without changing how politics operates and how those decisions that impact all of us are taken. So very practically, here's what we started doing. At Luminate, the foundation where I work, which is part of the Midiar network, we started to do some very serious research, essentially asking ourselves, okay, well, what does it take? What do people who are trying to organize around this, work on this, what do they need? What are they struggling with? Sarah is going to share in greater depth the findings of some of that research, but I wanted to just say, in essence, we found incredible and amazing and motivated people, but they shared very, very common structural problems. And they also were severely underfunded. So look, very quickly, we realized a huge part of maybe finding a solution here and supporting this nascent, quite beautiful ecosystem was funding. And we also learned that we had to build an infrastructure of support, really a backbone of support for these people all across Europe. And we also learned that we couldn't do it alone. So this is when we found and connected with our truly wonderful partners, Daniel and Paul from the Daniel Sachs Foundation, who I will hand over the floor to. So thank you for being here again. I'm deeply moved to see all of you. And Paul, over to you to tell the rest of the story.
Thank you, Gary. I'm really overwhelmed by all the fantastic engagement I see in the chat, and we really have convened a European community already. So I'm really excited about that. But to give you a little bit of more background of the Daniel Sachs Foundation and our work in this field. So our work really started in political philanthropy almost a decade ago now, with non-partisan voter turnout campaigns to primarily engage young voters in the Swedish elections. And we did a post-election analysis, and that showed that the main reason why young voters, primarily from marginalized communities, choose not to participate is because of a perceived lack of political representation. And from this realization, it led us to focus on revitalizing political leadership and supporting a new generation of diverse political leaders to run for elected office. And since then, a decade ago, we've now supported the establishment of political leadership incubators, reaching more than 25 countries around the world through the Apolitical Academy network. But as Gary said, we have also encountered a lot of difficulties in engaging in this space because it's very underfunded and it's fragmented, and then it's an ecosystem that needs a lot of support. So we teamed up with this vision to build a new fund dedicated to supporting Europe's political change makers. And we wanted to mobilize a brave and modern community of future-oriented funders who are willing and committed to experiment with us in supporting individuals and groups who are reimagining politics, who gets to hold political power, and really cultivating politics that is rooted in the values of inclusivity, in humanity, and in hope. And we also wanted these values to be ingrained in all aspects of multitudes, which is why we made building the foundation into a collaborative effort from the start. We are so grateful for all the fantastic support we have received along the way, including a design network that spans basically all of Europe, but also many incredible consultants, practitioners, and experts that have provided their wisdom and knowledge. You are too many to mention individually, but thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And now, here we are. I'm so excited, finally, with two absolutely exceptional co-directors at the helm of our work, launching what was once just an idea on a piece of paper. And you know, some may say that we are just foolish dreamers for doing this. It's such a daunting task, right? But they haven't met the fantastic people that we encounter on a daily basis. These awe-inspiring political change makers who are on a mission to find and foster a new generation of diverse political leaders to run for office and create meaningful change. But they also navigate the corridors of power, striving to build inclusive political cultures from the inside. And they create meaningful ways for communities and for individuals to mobilize and to build political power. It is our hope that multitudes will become a system of support and a community of practice for all of you. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm handing it over to you now, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gary and Paul, for your insights perspective on how multitudes came to be and also your well wishes. In this event, we wanted to give multiple actors from the ecosystem a chance to tell us about their perspectives and learn about their contributions to this ecosystem. So this is why we are now very happy to welcome with us three experts and also extraordinary people that are going to share their views, going to share their hopes also around the work that we are doing to build democracies that are working for everyone in Europe. So please welcome with me member of the European Parliament, Alice Bar-Kunkel, Professor Johanna Meyer, and our very own and co-founder, Daniel Sachs. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us now. And since we want to reimagine politics, we thought it might is the best idea to start with an actual politician. And this is why I'm turning to you, Alice Bar-Kunkel. Alice is currently a member of the European Parliament for the Swedish Green Party and serves as a member of the Committee for Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, as well as a member of the Committee for Women's Rights and Gender Equality. Welcome, Alice. Very great to have you. So you didn't start as a typical career politician. You were a journalist, a political operative, also a board member of several organizations and foundations before you entered politics in 2014 as a Minister of Culture and Democracy in Sweden. So coming in as a newcomer, could you describe in short what your experiences were when you first entered politics and what were some of the barriers or roadblocks that you experienced?
Thank you. And first of all, I must say I'm so happy to take part. I'm one of them who can say I was there from the beginning, because I think what already have been said is so great. And I think this is the beginning of something really big that will change the world. So I'm so happy. Well, but first coming into politics, to party politics in 2014 was, I have been close to it. I was an activist and I was the head of an agency. So I knew politics, but I hadn't been part of it. And I was struck by how many of those I met around the Prime Minister's table, but also going into Parliament and having discussions that never had been outside politics. They were brought up into politics and they had, and this was quite shocking, a very vague view on an understanding of reality. So this was really striking. And they didn't know real people. So it was so often around the prime minister's table that I could say, but this is not what people think. This is not what people are saying. And, you know, they were far away from reality. So this was a bit of a shock. The hinder and the challenges that I met was the same hinder and challenges that I have met all my life. I mean, I was born as a Black woman. And I mean, so this is part of me. So I met, of course, a lot of racism, sexism, and all kinds of random idiotism. So it was the same. It was the same in every room I've gone through and into, and every table I've sat around my whole life. So that wasn't a shock. It was more like, okay, it's the same here as everywhere.
Well, thank you for this perspective. And today, you are a senior politician, very well versed in navigating the corridors of power, as they say. But if you look back to when you first started, what kind of support did you wish you would have coming in as a newcomer? And what do you think should change in politics to make it more inclusive so that you don't run into these barriers?
Well, I had the privilege and the luck to be born in and raised in Sweden in the 70s and 80s. So, you know, I was really, I mean, per definition, born in the best country in the world. And Sweden is a very small country, but since I also was brought up in civil society, in church, in athletics, I mean, in different NGOs, Save the Children, the Red Cross, and Fair Trade, I had learned that I need to identify both allies as a broad group, but also supporters. So I became early on an expert that in going into rooms and identify the supporters, sometimes maybe it could be two, the ones with often white old men with good big hearts that really wanted a change. Because I saw that some of my fellows activists in those different civil society organizations, they saw all these white people as enemies, people that should stand in the way for them. But I knew that you couldn't, categorize them as that. So also when I went into politics, I identified those, often white older men, in different parties, not maybe someone maybe from the Green Party, but also among the Conservatives and among the Social Democrats. And I contacted them. I didn't know them. I'm saying, hello, Hans. I read that you said this and this, and maybe we can have a cup of coffee, and I can tell you about my visions and my goals. And they were often like, oh, okay. And then I met them, and I told them about what I wanted. And I was often right that this person was like, surprised, but also with a big heart said, I'm so glad, Alice, that you contacted me because I can help you reach your goals. So I have been having identified mentors all my life, also going into politics, who can share the same values as I do, and who can feel that him, often or her, together with me, can be tools to also create this world. And this is something I think is important for everybody to do.
I think this is a very important point, understanding where power resides and navigating this, even despite structural barriers that people are feeling, that are experiencing. This is something that is very much needed. So thank you so much for this perspective, Alice, and for this inside view into politics. And we now are going to try to zoom out a little bit and have more of a bird's eye perspective, which is why I am turning to Johanna Meyer, the author of a recent and well-received article on the emerging field of political innovation. Johanna, hi, good to have you with us. You are a professor of organization, strategy, and leadership at the Hertie School of Governance, which is also my former university, if I might add, as well as an academic editor of Stanford Social Innovation Review. And you've been really looking at this nascent field of political innovation. So can you give us a glimpse into what makes up this space? What drives the different actors within the field? And maybe how this is all related to the issues that we're seeing with democracies throughout Europe.
Thank you for having me, Jeff and Sarah, and congratulations to all of you for this launch. This is so important and timely and needed. But indeed, we observe a wave of citizen-led initiatives to reimagine democracy, but also, as Alice just eloquently described, reimagine politics worldwide and especially in Europe. Now, what motivates these initiatives are these, and Gauri mentioned it already, ongoing attacks on democracy in the form of increasing levels of polarization, populism, authoritarianism, but also the belief in democracy as critical for social and economic progress. It is exciting for us to see it was, and we will continue to see that these initiatives originate across the pro-democratic political spectrum. What they have in common is the attempt to revive democratic principles of justice, equality, representation, and civic participation in politics. Now, obviously, they vary in focus. Some support progressive social policy making, and others promote the interests of marginalized communities. However, they all are representative of something, of a new practice we call political innovation. And as they diagnose problems in the political system and collectively work towards solutions. Importantly, they not only reimagine, but proactively change how we practice democracy and instigate reform and transformation in the democratic infrastructure.
Okay, thank you so much for this insight. Maybe let's stay a little bit with the different actors. You mentioned different types of actors in the field, but what are their problems, or the most pressing challenges that they're facing? Maybe there are any trends that you've seen?
Before I get to the challenges that the initiatives we follow have, let me emphasize how important it is to analyze what these initiatives actually do. What are the ideas they put forward? Why is that important? Because the ideas they put forward expose important blind spots and weaknesses in our political system. And this affects us all, and we should all care about that. But you are right, yes, these initiatives do face challenges. So in our research, we uncovered 3 shared needs they have. And let me focus on these collective needs that they have. First, the need for a community. Democracy cannot be fixed by citizen innovators or by a single initiative. Reimagine democracy needs to be a collective endeavor. Multitudes Foundation will play an important role in growing and strengthening this community. Second, the need for being inclusive, and we heard about that already. This community is bound by its commitment to democracy. However, within this boundary, we will need to allow for plurality. Some initiatives will be nonpartisan. Others might favor a particular political orientation. We will need to nurture an appreciation for different models of political innovation based on the shared commitment and ambition to strengthen democracy. And third, the need for a robust financial infrastructure. And what we heard already, funding is an issue. We are only at the start of unpacking the intricacies of how to fund political innovation. Being strict on a no strings attached policy for funding, managing expectations for funders, of funders, or clarifying legal aspects are just some of those issues that the organizations we work with constantly grapple with. But we will also need to discuss how to mobilize more conservative sources of funding that are already available for protecting democracy, such as grant funding from established foundations or publicly available funding, and redirect these resources to fund political innovation. On all these fronts, Multitudes Foundation will play an important role, and I look forward to being part of that journey.
Thank you so much. We also appreciate you being part of this journey and for placing your trust in us. We will certainly only address the community and collective aspect of what you just mentioned when we explain our how, but let's turn to the third aspect that you mentioned, which is the nature, the underfunded nature of political work throughout Europe. And on this note, I'm turning to you, Daniel Sachs. You are a Swedish business leader, deeply committed to open and democratic societies. You are also a founder and funder of numerous organizations that are revitalizing democracy. And of course, you're also co-founder of Multitudes Foundation and funder through the Daniel Sachs Foundation. So Daniel, if we keep this bird's eye perspective, you have repeatedly stated that political leadership is the meta challenge of our time. Why do you think this is the case? And how does that relate to the lack of political representation?
So just first want to echo what my colleagues have already said, how excited and proud I am to be here today with you all and grateful to you all for engaging in this emerging endeavor of ours. Well, I think the meta challenge, as my colleagues have talked about, we're of course facing unprecedented challenges and largely also interrelated challenges. People are talking about the poly crisis. And all of this will impact societies deeply, labor markets, security, social cohesion, potentially further increase in inequality, which is already at record high levels. So overall, we're in a really serious situation, which really requires political leadership. I'm really hopeful, as has been mentioned, when I see what's happening in social movements and in activism. There's clearly a young generation which is extremely engaged in renewing society and engaging in politics in different ways. But we also need a renewal of politics and a political leadership. Without it, we cannot tackle all of the challenges we have. We need transformational and trusted political leadership in order to achieve the change that we need. And this is why I talk about political leadership as the meta challenge, because at the same time as our need of politics is the greatest ever, maybe, the trust in politics and political institutions and politicians and parties is the lowest ever. So this is why we have an existential importance of renewing politics. And as Paul mentioned, the reason why a lot of young people don't engage has to do with underrepresentation. And from my perspective, I think politics need to be renewed for a number of reasons. Partly, we need new and innovative policy solutions to answer these big challenges that we have. We need new voices, new faces, new brains. We also need politics to represent society and the electorate in equitable and inclusive ways in order for our democracies to be sustainable. And lastly, we need representation and innovation as the keys to restoring trust in politics. Also, as a side note, I would say that by making politics more innovative and representative and relevant, will also weaken the incentives and the soil for extremism. It turns out that the majority of people who switch to extreme or far-right parties do so not for the policies. They do so in spite of the policies because they want to achieve change and they're desperate for change.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for this bird's eye perspective. Again, the lack of funding is a serious problem in order to achieve this reimagining of politics. Why do you think it is crucial for the private sector and for the funders community to actually actively engage in politics in that sense?
Well, I think there's an inclination within the private sector to stay far away from politics and not involved. And of course, there are a lot of problematic examples of the interaction between money and politics in the past. But at this time, the point I make is that we can no longer afford to be political bystanders, passive political bystanders. Specifically, I'm referring to the necessity of engaging in independent and cross-partisan systems reform of the political system and the democratic system. So not use politics to advance personal ideas or agendas, but work at the system. And the objective should be to revitalize the system, of course, and rebuild trust. And when you talk about the drivers of this, one key driver of this is self-interest, because it's crucial for the private sector to operate in a democratic and inclusive society with strong rule of law and trusted institutions. That's just a kind of existentially important precondition for success. But I'd also make the case that it's necessary at this time to give back to the democratic societies in which we have flourished, societies that have provided us with prosperity, freedom, and security within democratic frameworks. And now in times of democratic backsliding, I think it's in my view, the responsibility of those of us who benefited from democratic systems to participate and work to collaborate to reverse that trend. And this is true for the private sector broadly. It's true for business, for philanthropy, for citizens as large. And as has been mentioned by Johanna, for example, there are now a lot of possibilities for engagement. There's a nascent movement of political innovation, and not least in Europe. So there are a lot of people and institutions to support. So I just want to say, to end on this point, to the funders listening, I want to emphasize the importance of incorporating non-partisan political giving into your philanthropic endeavors, because regardless of what your main focus is, politics plays a main role in your success. So you can do all your work in your field of expertise, but if you fail to be part of the renewal of politics, you might still fail. So I understand the reservations about involvement in the political sphere, and particularly if you lack familiarity with this emerging field, but this is partly why we're launching Multitudes, right? This intended to mitigate some of the associated risks and make it safer and more effective for the private sector to engage in the support of the renewal of the political system. So there's really no excuse anymore to stay away from this field. So I really want to encourage you all to join us in this endeavor to reimagine politics.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for this strong message also. We talked about responsibility, and I think that I speak for both of us that we couldn't agree more, but luckily there are more and more funders who are actually following this call and who are actually taking on this responsibility. And this is why we are so thrilled to announce now that there is another funder who will join Luminate and Daniel Sachs Foundation to support Multitudes Foundation's vision, and that is Democracy and Media Foundation from the Netherlands. Yes. Democracy and Media Foundation is dedicated to investing in independent and critical media, as well as building strong and fair democratic states. And by partnering with us, they see an incredible opportunity to promote more inclusive political leadership in Europe, while also remaining non-partisan and value-led. We are very grateful for your support. It means so much for us, not only in terms of our operations, but also in terms of sending a very powerful message out there to the funding community about the importance of supporting political initiatives like yours. So thank you so much from the whole team and from the board for your trust in Multitudes Foundation. And with that, once again, a big thank you to all the panelists, and I'm giving the mic to you.
Thank you so much. Well, such a good news. So now let's hear about how we're going to do that. You know, like we have decided to set up this foundation. You have understood the ambition. You know, you have understood that we really see that there is a vicious circle where the lack of representation creates political disengagement and not good enough policies for everyone. So what we want to do is to create a virtual circle where people feel represented, their needs are addressed, and therefore they engage again in politics and make our democracy stronger. So we have asked, and let's look at the next slide. We have asked some of our partners to work on research to understand what are the barriers to representation in politics. So thank you so much to Jackie Howard, who was leading that research for us. And what that research showed, it was an interview process with more than 60 people doing that work on the field in Europe. And what that research showed is that there are different types of barriers. I would just name a few. First of all, politics is part of society at large. And so there are exclusionary structures and institutions that, maintain the system as it is: economic inequalities, racism, white supremacy, patriarchy, all those things keep the system working and make it hard to have better representation in politics. The second thing, which is more specific to the political space, is that it is a space where there are expected behaviors, expected norms that make it difficult to have better representation. I'm thinking about violence, but also some kind of competition, isolation that makes it very hard for people to engage. What we've seen as well in that research is that there are skill and experience deficits from people who want to try and run and win power. And right now, this skill set is only the skill set of a few. And so if we really want to make it work for everyone, we must address that and make sure that we build those skills, but also build the infrastructure to gap the infrastructure so that those skills can be shared. And finally, I'll stop and I will be very quick because we talked about funding, but this is one of the biggest barriers. So basically, there is still a very strong mental barriers to funding political work, and we really need to unlock that to make better representation in politics. So how are we going to work? Both Jeff and I come from the organizing space. And so we have seen how powerful that methodologies can be to build power and build collaboration. So multi-tools approach is really inspired from those organizing practices. What that means is that we will be centering people underrepresented in politics in our work and facilitate their connection and trust building. We will also support strategic approaches, collective strategic approaches within that space. So not telling the space what needs to be done, but supporting the work to imagine what's the best strategy to achieve their goal. And finally, we will obviously facilitate coalition building and power sharing. So very inspired by those practices. So our theory of change is basically that if we provide resources and we support collaboration between people working to reimagine politics, while centering those underrepresented in the field, they will develop a collective response to build inclusive, hopeful, and human politics. So our theory of change is not linear. I think we all agree that we are long away from those theory of change that say we do A and then B happen and then C happens. We know that it's a very complex, fast-moving landscape right now, especially in the democracy space and in politics. So what we want to focus on, especially for that nascent ecosystem, is the conditions for change. And for us, there are three aspects of that conditions for change. First, we need resources. And again, we need to allow political change makers to build sustainable organization, and for that, they need funding. So that's what we're going to work on. The second thing they need, and this was very clear in the research we have, is a community. So really give those political change makers a place where they can build trust to unlock collaboration and do collective power building. And finally, what is needed is learning. We don't know yet how to do that. I think that we still need to invent the best way to make politics more representative and reimagine it. So we want to invest in supporting testing, learning, development in this community to make sure that we really have the best solutions to those challenges. So what's our approach to funding? Let's look at the kind of funds that we're going to give away. We want to be very clear that there are many ways to address the democratic backslide, but what we really want to focus on, because also no other funder is focusing on that right now, is political leadership as a response to a functioning democracy. So there are three types of funds, of initiatives that we will support. First, initiatives that build more inclusive and human political cultures. So we know that there's a lot of work to do inside and outside of parties to make politics more inclusive. How political parties select their lists, for example, how they build inclusive environments for people, but also how do we fight against the violence that political leaders often face while in office. The second type of initiatives that we will support are initiatives that help people and communities to mobilize to build political powers. So we want to make sure that we help set up and develop, I would say, because there's already some things, but develop the infrastructure for people to organize and mobilize between and during elections, because that's one thing we see. We can't wait for the electoral moment to come. We need to build powerful movements in between. And finally, we want to support new political leaders that enter and navigate power. We want to support initiatives that both identify, support, train, help new political leaders to enter power and make sure that they are supported while they're in office. So how are we going to find those initiatives? First of all, we want to recognize that right now our team is mostly based in Western Europe. So we want to build those connections with people all across the continent. And that's why we're going to work with local connectors. Right now, we have started working with 7 connectors from 7 different countries who will help us both identify and scout promising initiatives, but also connect to actors on the ground and really understand the kind of local context people operate in. It's very important for us to have that approach, and we really believe in the knowledge and expertise of people on the ground to tell us what are the initiatives that must be supported. We're so excited to work with Nick, with Amaka, but also with Maria, Ricard, Amira, Ergi, and Sebene, who are our first local connector. And hopefully, as the foundation develops, we hope to build an even larger local connectors network. So let's look at the resources that we're going to provide. We have decided to design an approach to grants, which is helping initiatives first be ideated. So how do we start with new idea? Towards really building sustainable organization and helping them scale. That's why we're offering 3 types of grants. The first type of grant is going to be ideation grants. As you've understood, this is a nascent ecosystem, so we need people to have time and space to find ideas, especially those people who don't have the space to think and who are often excluded from funding. So those ideation grants are going to be 10,000 euro for people to develop idea, and we'll support people in developing those ideas. The second type of grants that we're going to propose is incubation grants. So those are for organizations that already exist, but haven't had yet the resources to really structure and really build strong organization approach. So we're going to give up to 50,000 euros to those organizations and include support, obviously, to building those organizations. And finally, we're going to give scaling grants. So those are for already set up organizations who are lacking the funding to really increase their impact. And those organizations usually need large funding to be able also to become self-sufficient. So we're going to give up to 100,000 euros to those initiatives and organizations. Just want to say that all these grants are going to be core unrestricted funding and not time-bound. We really want to give that money to our community so they develop the best idea and they have as much space as possible to find what's best for them. This is a starting point, and as we're building the foundation, we hope to be able to give even larger grants to our community. So what's the grant making process? First, we're going to start an open call today, so Jeff will talk more about that later, which is going to be for ideation grants. But from onward, from now on, we're going to take application always on a rolling basis to make sure that we can be also as responsive as possible to people's needs. Who can apply? Registered organizations, but also individuals for the ideation grants from all geographical Europe. Finally, what are our criteria? We're going to focus on people underrepresented in politics. We want to focus on initiatives tackling systemic barriers, and we really want to make sure that those initiatives contribute to building collective power while centering the equity question into their organizational practice. So how are we going to give those grants? Especially, it's really important for us for the ideation grants. We're going to have a grant-making council who will help us find the best propositions. So this grant-making council is experts, activists who are working on the issue, who will both give us feedback on our grant-making process, help us scout grantees, and review grant applications. And Jeff will say more about the grant-making council and the ideation process just a bit later. So beyond funding, what we want to make sure that we give more than money. So we want to help grantees to develop their ideas into sustainable and effective initiatives. And for that, we're going to do 3 things. We're going to support grantees based on their needs. So we will do needs assessment with grantees as they're coming in, and we will make sure that we address what's necessary for their development. We'll foster a culture of collaboration and learning between those grantees. And finally, we will make sure that we match them with the relevant experts in the field that are needed, especially in their country and in their languages. So what else do we do? We do a community of practice. This is what I was saying earlier. Do you remember? So we said resources, community. So the community of practice for us is super important. It's a place that we want to provide to the community to increase their impact and innovation and to develop shared purpose. It will be an online space, and we also have some plans for doing offline meetings, but really it's a place to learn and develop ideas. It's not like a new mailing list or a new chat, but it's like really a place where peer-to-peer work can happen, and we can have both grantees, connectors, but also like political operatives as well as funders thinking together about the best way to do that. So we will launch the community of practice in September, and we can't wait to see what people will come up with. Finally, I just want to talk about the local workshop, which is one iteration of the community of practice work we want to do. We're going to beta test what it means to put people from the same country, at a local level to work together and see if that works well, if we can do that in more countries and support the organization of such workshop in other countries. So we'll beta test in Paris, in Berlin in November, and then we'll make sure to have that in more countries as we develop. So now it's time to talk about our first grantees. And I just want to say that those 3 grantees really demonstrate the energy we see in the field. They really exemplify the work we support. We have based our selection on our existing network, but also a mapping of the ecosystem that was made just before the launch of Multitudes. We identified around 50 organizations and met with some of them for conversation and reviewed them based on our criteria. We are conscious that this is an imperfect process, but we really want to experiment what it means to do funding differently, and we are looking for the community to help us find best way to do that selection. We're also very excited to support these initiatives because we think they're going to have such incredible impact. So now let me introduce to you our 3 grantees. So first of all, on the next slide, yeah, thank you very much. We're going to give an incubation grant to Fanta Politica based in Italy. We've been amazed by the energy from that small team, very small team, who supports and educates a national network of young counselors. Their approach is to say, if we want new people in politics, let's start at the local level. And so they support those young people younger than 30, under 30, to enter and navigate power at the local level. We are so excited and really, really welcome to the community to Fanta Politica. The second organization we will support is Brand New Bundestag from Germany. So we're going to offer a scaling grant to Brand New Bundestag, who is an incredible initiative. We've been so impressed by their work to bridge the gap between civil society and politics to make sure that the diverse voices of movements and communities are included in political decision-making. So they're really ready to scale. They are working on a way to also become self-sufficient with a model that is incredibly inspiring. So welcome, Brand New Bundestag, and really looking forward to work with you. And finally, we're going to support an initiative in France called Démocratiser la politique, Democratize Politics. This is an incredible initiative who works to document the underrepresentation of the working class in politics and support their mobilization toward their representation. But I want to make sure that we talk about Démocratiser la politique with Tufik Valipuram, who is joining us from Nice. He's going to tell us a little bit more about the initiative. So welcome, Tufik. Really nice to see you. So tell us a little bit about what is Démocratiser la politique.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jeff. So welcome. Sorry, I am so happy here and a bit stressed. My name is Tufik Valipuram. I am French, and I was born in Paris in a working class family to a Sri Lankan father and Asian mother. I am currently leading 2 projects, and one of them is Democratizing Politics. It is a mobilization and research project that aims at understanding where are and what experience working class people in the electoral and political spaces. To make it short, there are 2 legs. One is quantitative. We intend to gather data about who are the people who stand for election and who get elected at different scales, local, regional, and national. Those data will be put together in order to get a map of the social representation in politics. And the second leg is qualitative. We have started to gather in different cities and places people who were born in working classes and who have been involved in politics inside or outside political parties. We are organizing them so that they can share their experiences, but also knowledge and tools that can benefit to a much broader group of people. Collectively and collaboratively, as it is a collaborative project shaped by the people who are affected, we aim at setting up a public debate about social representation in politics.
Thank you so much, Tufik. This is so inspiring. I think that this is really important to also understand why you decided to do this project. What brings you here?
We launched it because, according to us, there is a black hole regarding the causes and the consequences of underrepresentation in politics. In France, working class people represent more or less 50% of the working population. But when you look at the areas of power and influence, this percentage drops. It is particularly true in politics. Every 5 years, there are a couple of articles and debates about this thematic, and especially the low percentage of workers in our national parliament. But nothing changes. Just to give you an example, between 1997 and 2002, there were only 3 workers of the private sector in our parliament. At the same time, there were 17 veterinarians. 3 years ago, a French economist, Julia Cagé, has launched a public debate about social parity in politics, similarly to what has been done with gender parity in politics in the past 20 years. We find it interesting, but our analysis is that we first need to make it very clear why it matters to work on underrepresentation of working classes in politics. Because today, people who hold the political power, they seem to have no interest, no willingness in changing the way it is. While we know three things. First, voters pay attention to the social origins of the candidate for elections. Secondly, those people, working class people, they tend to abstain much more than the other social classes. And thirdly, we know, thanks to international studies, that MPs with working class backgrounds, they tend to propose bills in favor of the interest of working class people. So eventually, we launched it because we consider that the way the renewal of democracy is led in France is very stimulating, but too technical and impossible to understand for most of the people. We want to set up this debate on underrepresentation in politics with clear facts, powerful testimonials, and concrete means of action elaborated by the people who suffer from the powerful inertia that both reproduces the current social order and maintains underrepresentation in politics. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate you doing this in English. That's also part of like creating more inclusive politics. It's also something that we want to work on. And hopefully our next events will be in different languages as well. So just to finish, let us know what the support is changing for you, as Démocratie de la Politique is a quite new project.
It changes a lot of things for us because actually in France, it is very complicated to get funds for this kind of project. So thanks to Multitude, we are going to accelerate the project by hiring people in our research team and work on the data that we want to gather. Secondly, thanks to Multitude, we will connect with European people and orgs which work on this topic. And thirdly, we hope to be more visible to other organizations, especially foundations, which might be interested in supporting us. Because, and I will finish with that, for many reasons, we haven't done any public communication yet. This is actually our first public move today. So this is why we have no websites for now. So if we want to reach out to us, please write us an email or ask the Multitude teams to put us in touch. In the next months, we will organize invite-only webinar to deepen the level of understanding on underrepresentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tufik, and really we're so excited to support you. And the good news is that you're not the three projects we presented today, including yours, are not the only one we're going to fund, because today we're launching our open call for ideation project. And Jeff, tell us about it.
Yes, so we've now finally reached to this pinnacle moment. From now on until July 31st, initiatives from all over Europe are welcome to follow our open call and apply for an ideation grant of 10,000 euros. We would offer this to 10 grantees. Let me give you a little bit of the details in terms of process and requirements. Our aim through our ideation grant is to give you space and freedom, a little leg room, so that you can really think and develop your ideas. We designed the ideation grant specifically for people and initiatives that have just started in that process and might not be formal structures yet. What really matters is that you have the passion and the conviction to actually go and try to tackle these structural barriers that we've talked about in this call. We're here to help you to turn this idea in hopefully sustainable solutions, and we're really looking for initiatives that are addressing the underlying root causes of political issues, but also that are led by and also work with the people who are directly affected by these issues. And like Sarah also briefly mentioned, we are assembling a grant-making council. Which is consisting of experts and leaders from different communities throughout Europe and also within the democratic renewal space. And we work with them hand in hand to identify, to select and support initiatives that align with our vision of this democracy that works with everybody. So please stay tuned. In the next couple of days and weeks, we will be announcing their names. We have worked very hard to make this grant stream and also the other grant streams that we have very straightforward. And this goes for the application, for the selection process. It goes for the reporting process also, which is very important. And the reporting process, we understand this more as a learning experience for both you and I. and us. So the key really is simplicity in this whole thing. All details regarding the grant making process, including the funding requirements and the selection criteria, can be found on our website. We will share the link to our website in the chat, sorry. And the website was just launched yesterday, so please feel free to look around and get familiar. Apologies that it's just in English for now, but like Sarah just said, we are working in the future to have the website and generally our foundation more accessible. So as we embark on this journey, we are very excited to collaborate with the local connectors and also with the Grantmaking Council, but we are also looking for you when we look for support. If you or someone that you know has an idea to reimagine politics and who could really benefit from the grant, please feel free to share the link to our website, share the link to our open call with them, and you can find the link to the application form on the website or also now on the chat.
And yes, we're counting on you, and we made it easy for you to share, so you have no excuse. So we're just dropping now in the chat a link to our LinkedIn post who's telling about the ideation grant. So you can just click now, go on your LinkedIn and share it around you. You can also share it on other channels. Again, like all information on our website if you need anything, and make sure you register also to our newsletter because there's a lot that's going to happen in the coming weeks and months, and we want to make sure that you stay updated.
So, unfortunately, we've reached the end of our launch, but we want to make sure that we finish off with saying thank you to all of you for being here, for helping us during this past few months, for bringing all the excitement and hope and your ideas. This was really a blessing, and we're really very much looking forward to working with you in the future as well. So let's keep on talking, let's keep on debating, let's keep on helping each other and sharing and supporting our work, because in order for us to really make reimagining politics tangible, we need all of our help, all of our voices, different perspectives, every talent and ideas that we can have. We truly need multitudes.
Thank you so much. Really, really nice to have seen you today. I just want to say we're super hopeful. Sometimes we talk about politics and it feels like, it's not a cool place to be. We want to be again saying there's hopes in politics. We have lots of hopes. So please share in the chat, what's your hopes for reimagining politics? What do you want? What do you want to see? And let's go back to our homes. Let's go back to our communities and our office, and let's reimagine politics together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.